Am I live? Oh, looks like
Yeah,
I'm
you are.
live. Hello, Jacksonites. This is a new setup for how things are going to be whenever I have a guest. I finally got off my damn ass and I finally put StreamYard together because seems like ever since you assholes introduced me to StreamYard, it's been nothing but fucking StreamYard ads all over my damn laptop and phone. Fuckers.
This episode is brought to you by StreamYard and Raid Shadow Legends. I had to.
Anyway, so welcome back to Super Kaiju Binge. And as you can clearly see, joining me today is good old Jackie Boy from BigJackFilms.
Hello, I'm not dead. That was my character. Kind of.
Ish.
My house blew up.
Anyway, so for today's episode of Super Kaiju Binge, we're going to go all the way back to the year 1949 to discuss a not necessarily a little known film, but I kind of consider this to be a little movie that left a big impact, and it was made by big people that made a big movie.
No relation.
16 years prior. Today, we will be discussing the original Mighty Joe Young. I finally got around to seeing this movie, and I thought this would be a good addition to Super Kaiju Binge.
It's funny because you have the Blu-ray. I only have the DVD.
Get the DVD or get the Blu-ray, guys. It's like $14. Totally worth it.
I actually have a VHS version, and it's in color.
I must have. So, Jackie Boy, what might be your history with this movie?
Well, the first thing I will say is, I had no idea this was a thing until years later. I remember the first thing I ever heard of the title, and it's much like everybody else was,
The
Disney remake. The Disney remake, the trailers, the ads on the Lion King 2 VHS promo in theaters this Christmas. That's what I remember. I did see the remake in theaters. I did own the VHS, DVD, and everything. Once Kong started coming into my addictions, my main addiction actually at this point, by the time the Peter Jackson movie came out, I obtained from a corner video store, like a really crappy one, the 3-pack trilogy box set that came with the original Kong, the 2-disc special edition, Son of Kong, which for a long time was the only way you could get that movie, and Mighty Joe Young, which again, only way you could get it. And it came with all 3 of them, and I kind of just binged all of them, having no idea that the Disney film was a remake. But I started to put the pieces together once I realized, wait, the RKO logo, I saw that in the remake. Right, RKO did the remake as well. So I remember kind of watching it, and it was sort of just there. Once I educated myself and realized, okay, this is also a Harryhausen movie, then I was more intrigued and interested in the film itself. And I've watched it a few times. It's probably, out of all the Kong movies, one of the ones I watched the least, but I still think it's a classic. It's a decent film.
Similar to Jackie Boy, I discovered Mighty Joe Young through the Disney remake. As a young one, I was a very avid Disney watcher. I had a shit ton of Disney movies on VHS. Toy Story, Toy Story 2, Lion King 2, Snow White, Sleeping Beauty. Yes, I'm a fan of those movies. I talk a lot of shit about Disney nowadays. Jackie Boy, you're still blue.
I know, I look like an avatar. Actually, I'm kind of excited about the next one. Actually, my interest peaked back a little bit.
I'm trying to not keep away, but I'm trying to pace myself with my excitement for those movies. But I agree. So, of course, seeing all those Disney VHS tapes, a very common trailer that I would see in the previews was, of course, the trailer for Mighty Joe Young. And that always intrigued me because it was a giant gorilla movie that wasn't King Kong.
Ladies and gentlemen, Elvis is in the building.
But it wasn't actually until Jackie Boy's King Kong videos where I discovered that Mighty Joe 98 was a remake.
Did you have
Because
a nerd spitting moment where you're like, it's a remake?
not necessarily, but it was kind of I was like, oh, really? That was a remake? Oh.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would scour the internet and I would see that trilogy pack that Jackie Boy was talking about. And it was included along with Kong 33 and Son of Kong. And then the third one was Mighty Joe Young. But for some reason, I just never had the desire to see the movie. I would see a couple reviews and I would see a couple videos where people would talk about it. Like Brendan Tenold put Mighty Joe Young in his top 10 favorite Harryhausen films. I think Mighty Joe Young was number 7 or 6, maybe. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't seen that in a while.
It's funny, a lot of people want me to do a crossover with that guy.
Good luck. He's harder to get a hold of than
Yeah,
James.
I've heard he is a very busy man.
Anyway, so even then, the desire to see this movie never really just crossed my mind. That is until, what was it that got me interested?
Probably like the.
Oh, wait, no, I remember. Are you familiar with the kaiju YouTuber Up from the Depths?
I've heard of him, but I've never really fully watched his content.
First of all, you should, but it was through Up from the Depths that I finally, recently, like in the last couple months, where I just decided
they're not getting any signals from, and they're finding.
Sorry, my bad. Continue.
I'm totally drawn up. God damn it! Stop interrupting me. Oh yeah, when I finally just said, you know what? I think I finally want to see Mighty Joe Young. So 3 days ago, I finally sat down, bought the Blu-ray of Mighty Joe Young. Again, $14, totally worth it. This movie looks gorgeous on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I only have the DVD. I haven't seen the Blu-ray version.
Sat down, watched the movie, and couple of things.
Couple of things. That's a review.
One, I really enjoyed it. I was very, very, very impressed with this film. I thought it was very entertaining, a very well made, and it was a very sweet, fun, good film. And here's the second thing. I think it's 10 times better than both Kong 33 and certainly Son of Kong.
Okay, so you're on par with almost James's review where he said it's a bit more superior.
Did he say that?
Yeah, he actually said he kind of likes it a little more than the original Kong and Mighty Joe and Son of Kong.
Well, then I'm going to take it a step even further. It's a far superior film to King Kong. And obviously is way, way, way better than Son of Kong. Ugh, Son of Kong.
It's everything. It's kind of like Konga. Everything's great until the fucking gorilla shows up.
Actually, a old co-host of mine, Cinematic Trash, aka Pierce, he once told
the BigJackFilms version of the Cinema Snob.
Yes, actually, he is. He's a bit of just a little bit of a cinema snob. No offense, Pierce. Love you the most. He told me that Mighty Joe Young is what Son of Kong should have been. Yeah, I agree.
That's a good argument. That is a case in point argument.
So, yeah, I really dug Mighty Joe Young. I thought it was a damn fine movie, and I'm going to be kicking myself in the ass for a while, saying, why didn't I see this sooner?
Yeah, it's a decent classic. It is. I mean, it's also because it is made by the same people who made the original, and it's almost like we're going to take everything we did with Kong and we're going to perfect it. That's what it is.
Yep.
I mean, It's sort of in a way for me the equivalent of Michael Jackson's Smooth Criminal, where it is my favorite song that Michael made. And as much as I love
Is it
things
really?
as much as I love Thriller and Beat It, and while those had great production value, Smooth Criminal perfected all of that from Thriller. So it is sort of on par, where I do like the original and 76 more, but this is a perfected version in terms of quality and story and somewhat storytelling. I think the original Kong has a better story, but Mighty Joe Young has better quality, like in terms of better like how it looks. Essentially, it has surpassed the original in that regard. In fact, when Mighty Joe was a success at the same time, Cooper was also working on Cinerama, the widescreen breakthrough in filmmaking. And when he saw that with the combination of Willis O'Brien and Harryhausen's work on Mighty Joe, he said, I might want to remake Kong in the Cinerama process with Harryhausen and Willis O'Brien. And he was going to work on it. But I think like the guy who did like the camera stuff, like the ability kind of like fucked off, so he canceled it. But even then, like the rumor was that like a lot of people, because I think like one of Cooper's estates had stated he wanted to cast Errol Flynn as Jack Driscoll, Orson Welles as Carl Denham, and a newcomer at the time, Marilyn Monroe as Ann Darrow. That would have been that actually would have been a great Hollywood like actually a big one of those big 60s epic films. I always pictured it on that scale, like a Cleopatra or a Lawrence of Arabia, or like that big. Oof, that would have been something.
That would have been something. So yes, indeed, actually, Mighty Joe Young was indeed made by a lot of the same people that worked on the original King Kong. It was once again distributed by RKO. It was directed by
the studio where its logo is constantly swearing.
Yep. It was directed by Ernest B. Schoedsack, who he was a co-director, right?
Yeah, he co-directed Kong with Cooper because they were both teammates on things like their old natural dramas like Chain Grass. But at the time, I think Cooper was he was working with John Ford and Cinerama, so he didn't have time to direct. So Schoedsack took over, but Cooper definitely did produce the film. Like he was hands-on involved.
Marion C. Cooper also produced Mighty Joe Young, and he also had some. He co-wrote the story along with, was it Schoedsack's wife?
Yeah, Ruth Rose, who also wrote the original Kong. What's funny is a lot of the original Kong script, outside of the stuff by Edgar Wallace at the time, was based on Cooper, Schoedsack, and Rose's adventures out in doing national dramas. They based it all on those three leads are based on the three creators themselves.
Now apparently Schoedsack and Cooper wanted to make this movie fairly recently after Kong and Son of Kong. However, production was delayed for at least a decade due to both Schoedsack and Cooper serving in World War II.
I think also Schoedsack lost an eye at that time. He actually lost an eye during the war.
So after that went down and they got out of the military, they came back to the film business and they got around to making Mighty Joe Young. With a budget of $1.8 million, it didn't really leave an impact, making only $1.95 million against its production budget.
It's funny because the original Kong, I think, was budgeted around at the time. This was the Great Depression.
$672,000. So this movie had a pretty substantial increase, but it didn't really make much of a splash.
Well, it's funny. A lot of movies during that period were very much kind of hit or miss films. Like it's sort of like The Wizard of Oz. The Wizard of Oz is considered this groundbreaking classic for all time. It's amazing.
And yet
when
it flopped.
Came out, it flopped. It
hard.
Was a tank. And then it wasn't only until after television reissues and home video, then it was like, okay, this is a classic. Same thing with Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. Same thing with even The Princess Bride had that happen where it was kind of forgotten about, didn't do well. And then it wasn't until like home video that it was like, oh, this is a classic movie.
Same thing with Mighty Joe 49. To little audience fanfare in when it initially came out, but as the years have gone by, Mighty Joe Young has definitely found its audience, and many people consider it to be a creature classic.
It really was
Myself
due to
included.
the reissues for one, because movies tend to be re-released every few years. But I think it was also television, because I think was it Channel 9 at one point had shown the original for like 24/7 for a whole week on during Thanksgiving. And then when that was a huge hit, then they would actually do a triple feature during Thanksgivings on Channel 9 in New York. So they would show Kong, Mighty Joe, or Kong, Son of Kong, and Mighty Joe all in one day during Thanksgiving, and it was a tradition for a lot of people, and so that's where a lot of people kind of got word of Mighty Joe as well, was through those TV airings back in like from the 60s onwards.
Fitting. So with all that being said, let us get into the plot of Mighty Joe, shall we?
The plot.
In 1937, Tanganyika Territory, Africa, 8-year-old Jill Young is living with her father on his ranch. Before we begin, of course, a word from our sponsor.
Coca-Cola. I'm all out. All I have is empty bottle.
Wait, what do you have?
I just have an empty bottle.
Lame.
Yeah. Didn't have time to go to the grocery store. I went to the corner. I found out there's a corner store like right across the street from me. I didn't know. I was like, oh shit.
No, Andrew and Kaiju Network are here.
Hey, Kaiju Network, we got them all set up with a new thing. Moving on. The plot.
While in her yard, 2 Africans come by with an orphaned baby gorilla. Jill so wants a pet that she trades her toys and money for him, vowing to always care for the gorilla. 12 years later, now in 1948, I believe. Yeah, 1948. Max O'Hara, played by Robert Armstrong, and his sidekick Greg, played by Ben Johnson?
Ben Johnson, probably, yeah. Well, but yeah, Ben Johnson was the hero. It wasn't Bruce Cabot.
Yeah,
I think at the time he was kind of done.
And his sidekick Greg are on a trip to Africa looking for animals to headline in O'Hara's new Hollywood nightclub. The 2 men have captured several lions.
Well, that's
there we go.
That's sad. We kidnapped Simba.
And are about to leave when the giant gorilla Joe Young appears, now 12 feet in height and weighing 2,000 pounds. I always thought Joe was 10 feet.
Whatever. That was a big monkey. Well, I mean, beats Kong with 18 to 24 feet. Oh, good lord.
He doesn't look like he's 12 feet. He looks like he's 10, because even Kiko looks bigger than him.
10 or 12, I'd say. Like, around that. It's very much debated on what his height is. He's definitely smaller than Kiko.
When a caged lion bites Joe's fingers, he goes on a rampage. Visualizing Joe as their big nightclub attraction, Max and Greg try to rope him, but he throws both men from their horses and breaks free of their ropes. A grown Jill.
To think that this scene would later be rehashed for the Valley of Guanji.
Yeah, which I've never seen.
Are you? Oh my god, dude! You gotta watch that. That's
not interested.
It's Cowboys versus dinosaurs.
Don't care.
It's better than Cowboys versus aliens.
A grown Jill Young arrives, played by Terry Moore, who's still alive.
And she was in the remake with Harryhausen in a cameo.
Oh, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah. It's like, she reminds me of somebody you and me first met. I'm like, that's adorable. That was Rick Baker's idea, by the way.
Calming Joe down, she is furious with both men and storms off with Joe. Both later meet with Jill, and Greg becomes hopelessly smitten with her.
Of course.
Having now calmed, Jill hears out Max's nightclub proposal as Greg also tries to dissuade her. Max tells her that she and Joe will be a huge Hollywood hit and will be rich within weeks. Needing the proffered income, she agrees to take Joe to Hollywood. Why do people keep capturing giant monsters will always make them money. It
The
always
problem
blows
is
me in the face.
they're all about the show, but they don't think about caring for the fucking thing. Put it in at least like with elephants after in a circus, especially after the fact, they have a sanctuary in LA where they take all those guys.
On the crowded opening night, on stage, Joe lifts a large platform above his head, holding Jill playing Beautiful Dreamer on a grand piano, which has to weigh as much as him. Following that, Joe has a tug of war with the 10 strongest men in the world, which he easily wins. Famous Italian heavyweight boxer Primo Carnera tries to box with him, but Joe playfully tosses him into the audience and laughter ensues. Fun scene.
It's a good scene. That's great. That's a great one.
Joe's popularity grows, and by the 10th week, he is Hollywood's biggest nightclub attraction. Joe and Jill, however, are beginning to miss their home in Africa. Jill tells Max and Greg that she is having second thoughts, Greg tries to convince Max to let them go, but thinking only about more profit, he is able to talk her into staying. By the 17th week, Joe is miserable. He has grown tired of performing and is very homesick. To make matters worse, his next act is a humiliating performance playing an organ grinder with Jill, acting as a little girl turning the handle. I'm tired
of this, Grandpa. That's too damn bad.
When a thrown bottle strikes Joe in the face, his rage resurfaces and roars at the crowd, while Jill shouts for the audience to stop. Later, during dinner, Greg and Jill express their feelings for one another, with Greg agreeing to return with her to Africa. In his cage, an unhappy Joe tries to ignore 3 drunks who have sneaked backstage. They offer Joe an open whiskey bottle, but he becomes intoxicated after 2 more open bottles. And taunting him, the drunks burn Joe's fingers with a cigarette lighter. Roaring with pain and rage, he breaks out, smashing through a nearby wall and wrecking the nightclub's interior. He then smashes the glass of the lion habitat and allows the lions to escape into the crowded nightclub, where Joe beats down several of them. Jill and Greg return and find the nightclub in chaos. Jill manages to get Joe back to his cage, while arriving police shoot the remaining lions. Oops.
Oh, that sucks. Forgot about that.
A court decree orders Joe be shot.
Which makes no sense, because that is a valuable asset and probably a rare species of gorilla. You might want to try to at least maybe get some blood work so you can maybe clone him later. You guys are throwing out some pretty cool shit.
And Jill's pleas to save his life are denied. Greg, O'Hara, and Jill devise a plan to get Joe out of California using a moving van, then a cargo ship. When Joe's executioners arrive, they find his cage empty and themselves locked inside the nightclub. As the van is leaving, Joe is spotted by an itinerant worker who is later questioned by police. On the way to the ship, police spot the moving van and give chase, but Joe has been cleverly transferred to a covered truck. The moving van, driven by Max, is just a decoy. The police eventually stop the van and arrest Max. Driven by Greg and carrying Joe and Jill, the truck gets stuck in heavy mud. And with Jill's encouragement, Joe pushes the truck free, and the police then get stuck in the same mud as the truck drives away. Before reaching port, they witness a tall orphanage engulfed in flames, coming right out of butt-the-fuck nowhere.
It's like, oh, we're going to get out of here. Hey, look, a brand new orphanage.
Yeah, okay. Just right there. Okay. Jill and Greg help the caretakers save the kids. They escort most of the children, but the flames spread quickly, and a last group, along with Jill and Greg, are trapped on the top story. At Jill's urging, Joe braves the raging fire by climbing an adjacent tall tree, carrying Jill to safety, while Greg lowers each child by rope to the ground. One child is left behind, So Joe climbs up again, grabbing the little girl. Then he and Greg climb down. A wall of the burning orphanage collapses as they near the ground, nearly killing Joe and the little girl. Max assures Jill that because of Joe's heroism, his life will now be spared. Much later, Max receives home movies from his friends. Jill and Greg are now married.
Okay, that was quick. And they live happily ever after.
And living on their ranch with Joe, who has made it safely back to Africa. Joe waves goodbye along with Jill and Greg to Max, ending the movie on a fucking rare-ass happy note for a Kong film.
Yeah, how often is it that the King Kong lives? I'm not sorry.
Are you ever? So how about this story, Jackie boy?
I think it is much more lighthearted than the previous Kong iterations, and I think that was the reason why it was also made. It wasn't just the fact that it was, oh, we're gonna be doing like a new Kong movie. It was also a matter of there was a lot of making up for the more darker elements of the first two. I think if anything at the time, this was definitely much more of the first time I think the franchise, if you call it that, or the giant gorilla genre, kind of went more for a family-friendly audience than it did like another follow-up or a sequel. And it is pretty much like the remake. They're on par, a Kong movie for kids. But unlike the Mighty Kong, which sucks,
Ass.
It's terrible. This was much more of a very much more of just like, here's one for the kids. And you know what? That's okay. I think actually for any kids, young kids, this is a good place to start.
Yeah, I agree. That's kind of one of my pros for this film, but I like this movie's story. It definitely feels, this also is one of my pros, it feels like a big homage to King Kong. It feels like the original creators were just reliving the glory days.
They were nostalgic. They were nostalgic for their own work.
And they were just trying to I do feel like they wanted to incorporate some stuff here that they wanted to include in Kong, but they just never got the chance. So this was their second chance to do what they really, really wanted to do. It's kind of like what Kaiju Network here is saying. They only make King Kong because they're far enough into Creation's production to do so, which may be the case. So
also,
anything.
I want to say hi. A big shout out to Late Post Films. Great guy. Check out his channel. He's here to join us. So good to see you, Late Post.
Cool.
Yeah.
All the merrier. But yeah, I like this movie's story. It takes the best elements from King Kong and just perfects them. It's also like what Up From the Depths said in his review of Mighty Joe 98. This movie takes the third act of King Kong and stretches it into an entire movie.
I agree, because you ever wonder what the show would have looked like had nothing gone wrong? Because think about it, like the first show when they're in New York, I mean, yeah, you kind of had it all planned. You got Kong in without nobody knowing, but what would the show would have been like if it was successful? That's what I wonder. Like, would Carl be like, okay, well, we've done our show, we've made our millions, do we send them back? Or no, let's keep going. And I think they kind of raised the more realistic answer that if you've got a moneymaker, tour that shit like a motherfucker. And it ends up being like, okay, that's enough.
I still say, I haven't said this before, but I think had they done to Kong what they do to Joe in this movie, the show still would have tanked because Kong would have gotten sick of it just like Joe. Though I think Kong would have gotten sick of it a lot faster than Joe would have.
I mean, on top of that Great Depression, it's also a matter of, are people going to actually pay for this shit?
Yeah.
You know?
All right, so let us get into our pros of Mighty Joe Young, shall we? Jackie boy, you can go first.
I have I'd say about 5, actually. I mean, first of all,
I have 11.
the special effects, Ray Harryhausen, Willis O'Brien, this is at their top tier. In fact, this was one of the first movies to ever win an Academy Award for visual effects. Because at the time,
did it win the Academy
it did
Award?
win, yeah. Because at the time, visual effects weren't still considered really a category to be recognized for. They were just there. And this was one of the first movies in its early years to win that award. Willis O'Brien won the award, and he made a speech. You can actually find it on the Oscars YouTube page. It's only the rare few times you ever hear the voice of Willis O'Brien in a public setting.
I have to see that.
So he did. So the effects are great. I mean, because Harryhausen was still relatively new and he was still sort of an apprentice, he wasn't fully there yet as the master. This was a movie that he kind of obviously
he was learning.
Yeah, O'Brien took Ray under his wing after seeing what Ray was doing because Ray actually had seen the original King Kong when he was 13 at the Grauman's Chinese Theater on the premiere. And that's what inspired him to do what he does. So he started doing his own stop motion. In fact, one film he was working on was a film called Evolution, which he was doing in his parents' garage, which was sort of the history of evolution. And it was going to show dinosaurs and stuff. But he actually pulled the plug on it because Walt Disney had done Fantasia and had done a scene relatively similar with The Rite of Spring. So eventually he took his tests and his puppets to Willis O'Brien, and O'Brien took him under his wing, and the rest is history.
Also, that evolution thing, that kind of sounds like what O'Brien was doing with creation.
And maybe that's why, obviously O'Brien kind of had interest in him, because O'Brien at the time was the only one doing stop motion to that massive scale. And at the same time, he had saw what Harryhausen was doing, a young kid doing what he was doing and kind of perfecting it, and said, we might have an industry here. I'm going to take this kid under my wing and teach him the ropes. So it was kind of cool to have, it's one of those rare moments where if you're in Harryhausen's shoes, you get to work with somebody you aspired to do what you do. And, you get to learn from the master itself. It's that old thing. So for one thing, yes, the effects are just like next to the original Kong. They've perfected at the time the stop motion. I mean, even from the fur not being as bristled, and in fact, I love the fact that with Harryhausen,
drives me nuts.
Yeah, with Harryhausen, when he was doing the animation, he would actually get into the character. I guess he kind of took a note from what Walt was doing back then, where they would have actors like doing reference footage of what the characters did, so they can pretty much animate over that. So with Harryhausen, he would just kind of film himself like doing things that gorillas would do. He tried to get down the real aspects, and at the time, gorillas were actually still a relatively new species of animal. So there wasn't much in terms of research. I guess he looked up footage, but he would, like, instead of, to get into the character of Joe, during breaks, he wouldn't eat a sandwich or anything. He would just eat carrots, and he would try to get down the character where he'd just be like, and kind of just get that character down of how gorillas are, and he incorporates that into his animation. So it was one of the very few times that it went from like cartoons to using models. And in fact, one of the models for Joe is named Jennifer, and is named after, I think, one of Ray Harryhausen's celebrity crushes, or one of his high school sweethearts, which is really adorable. He named it Jennifer.
But that also kind of reminds me of what Haruo Nakajima would do when he was researching how to play Godzilla in the original Gojira. He would go to his local zoo and he would study tigers, bears, and gorillas and study their movements and how to incorporate that into his portrayal of Godzilla.
It was also it was at the time, I think, before they even discussed a full design of Godzilla. He was thinking, okay, gorilla, so I have to hunch my shoulders. If it's tigers, because he was kind of doing that kind of the movements of animals. It's really cool. I mean, I know when I did my Kong remake, I did go to the Toronto Zoo a lot, and I did study the movements and did actually get down. So I watched a lot of our gorilla. Our silverback is named Charles, and he's a really cool dude. And I would just sit there and I would just watch him for like 2 or 3 hours and just kind of get down what his behavior was. And that, so you got to do research like that on any project, is definitely beneficial. So pro number one is the effects. They've improved. And for Harryhausen, this was a huge thing for him, I think. I think this really pushed his, because I think, no, didn't Beast from 20,000 Fathoms come out after Mighty Joe? Because that was in the 50s. So,
Mighty Joe was 49. and then Beast was 1953.
So
And that was
really, I
really
like
his
to think
first solo effort.
So with the 3 Kong films are the reason we have Godzilla to begin with. Because think about it. I mean, yes, Kong was the main inspiration, but without Ray Harryhausen there for Mighty Joe, then there wouldn't have been the Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, and then there wouldn't have been Godzilla. So thanks,
What goes
Harryhausen.
around comes around.
Yeah, so that's one of my pros. Pro number 2, the cast is fantastic. Outside of one person, but I'll get to him in my cons. Robert Armstrong, it's just good to see him in that kind of Carl Denham-esque role again. While I like Carl Denham more because at least you had 2 movies to kind of really flesh out the character, this is a nice little kind of spin-off character to that. And that's what this is. It's not, I know you think it's, I mean, I know you have your theory about it being canon, Nick, but this is very much a spin-off movie. It's not necessarily a sequel, it's a spin-off. It's sort of like Rogue One in a way. Very much a spin-off film. Terry Moore is great. Again, while I prefer other actresses, whereas most of Kong's girlfriends are relationships, Jill is much more of a sister to Joe. Very much the sister type, the big sister type who looks after the little brother, and it is very heartwarming. The fact that Terry Moore is still around, and fuck, she doesn't get the recognition she deserves. Like, she's beating out Betty White right now. I know it's too soon, but it's like, you know what?
Damn, dude, you actually went there.
I did fucking go there. Why is she not? Why is she not on the elderly golden age of cinema Mortal Kombat thing? Why is she not at the top with Morgan Freeman for the final round? Seriously.
Damn, Morgan Freeman. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah, so Terry Moore, so good in this, and it's one of those things where, like, even in the remake when her and Harryhausen make a cameo by the request of Rick Baker. It's kind of very much a homage to what Universal was trying to get off the ground since 1975, because in the Legend of King Kong script, there was going to be a female news reporter or a press reporter during Kong's show, and then at the end, and it was going to be Fay Wray. It was written for Fay, and then that didn't happen. Then, like, the 90s, they were going to try to have her, and then 2005, and then ultimately she passed away. But that was sort of, I think, a nod to that idea that the original actors from the previous films come in to make a cameo. It's sort of the first film to kind of like remake to do that. I kind of love that. Sort of like in Lou Ferrigno showing up in the Ang Lee Hulk movie as a cameo. So like stuff like that, really fascinating stuff. So the cast is great. Pro number 3, the music. The music's really good. This is once again Max Steiner, the great Max Steiner, the John Williams of the Golden Age. I mean, outside of Kong being his first major gig, this guy did this.
Wait, hang on.
No, it was Max Steiner.
This says music was done by Roy Webb.
Really? I swear it was Max Steiner. I mean, either or, Max Steiner really did do, like, he was the John Williams of the Golden Age. This guy did Kong, he had Gone with the Wind, he did Casablanca. Like, oh my God, this guy wrote some of the greatest film themes of the Golden Age. Let me just see here. I'm actually kind of curious myself, actually.
Yeah, like it wasn't Max Steiner. It sounds like Max Steiner, though.
It does. Well, it's funny, too, because outside of one track, which I'll get to in a sec, what I like about, like, say, the opening theme, do you ever notice the opening credits? There's a couple of notes of, like, the Back to the Future theme in there a little bit. Like, nope. Like there's that big theme where it's, well, you know the theme to Back to the Future where it's like bum bum ba 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 da ba 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 bum. They play a little bit of that where it's like dun dun da 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 dun 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 dun. There's a little bit of Back to the Future. Go watch the credits again, listen to it again. You'll realize, oh shit, I wonder if Alan Silvestri took a few notes. In fact, fuck, if they did do another remake more based on the original, get Alan Silvestri to do the score, and there you go. So.
Sure.
The music's good. And on top of that, I will say this. The track Beautiful Dreamer will be a little bit repetitive, but a good kind of repetitive. There's only a few films that really use that track. For me, it's this, and Batman 89 used it a lot too. When the Joker was like, "Stop the press. Who is that?" They use that track a lot. But the score's pretty good. I mean, it's no Max Steiner, but it's pretty much on par. Pro number 4, I do think the plot and the visuals outside of the effects are pretty much a step up. The plot is very much a sweet, more nicer, family-friendly version of the Kong story. And on top of that, in terms of just the quality, they've definitely upped that, not just with the effects, but also when the climax happens. When they first released it, it was all in the whole movie was black and white. But when they got to the fire scene, that actually they gave it a tinted red in the film stock because they wanted to kind of like surprise the audience and show a bit more of depth and dread to the event. So the version you probably saw with the red filter at the end, that was intentional for its release. Now I know obviously in the 80s, Ted Turner had actually he had taken a lot of these old films and colorized them. The colorized version is pretty good. Like, it's not terrible, but I mean, it's much better in black and white as it was originally meant to be seen. Although I wish they could somehow find the colorized negatives of these films and put them on the box sets as like a little extra, feature to have. Like, oh, you can have the original 4K quality version, or here's the one that's colorized, but who gives a shit? So that's pro number 4. And then pro number 5.
Real quick, I have to say it's really annoying sometimes listening to people because I myself have posted a question in multiple I don't care about Spider-Man, Steven. Stop flooding my comments with goddamn Spider-Man shit. I don't care. I've posted this question a few times and hey, how does the idea sound of taking black and white monster movies and colorizing them? And within the snap of a finger, I just get flooded with people really nastily saying, how about no, you crazy Dutch bastard?
It is very
I don't
much,
get it. Like, what the hell's the problem?
I think it's because it bastardizes the original. Because I think the fear is that it's very much because of things like the special edition changes in Star Wars. That here's a newer version, so that's going to be the definitive version, the original version. We're going to burn the negatives. It never existed. Here's the new version. That's what they're afraid of, is that it's going to be a George Lucas problem, which is funny because when Ted Turner was colorizing films in the 80s and 90s and people were really protesting it, one of the biggest advocates was George Lucas. This is the same guy who would make changes in his movies and say they're better, which is a complete hypocritical move on his part.
Yes, but also I think people should just shut up and wait until they see what happens, because not everybody who wants to colorize movies wants to destroy the originals. It's like what Trev said, talking about releasing the theatrical cut and the Shane Black cut of The Predator. If you give people the option, they're way less likely to bitch.
Same thing with Justice League. I mean, obviously the Zack Snyder cut is the superior version, but for people who do like the Joss Whedon cut, it's still there on Blu-ray in 4K. You're not, but even Steven Spielberg, when he did the special edition of E.T., when they put it out on DVD, he had specifically said we can only put the special edition on DVD if you include the original version, which he did. Now, later on, he actually had an interview at a film festival coming up on, I think, the 30th anniversary of E.T., and somebody asked him with the Blu-ray, are they going to include the special edition? And he actually said, when I made that, I was just kind of following a trend, but I realized how much I had taken a lot of the fans' enjoyment of E.T. away from them. I took away their childhood. So, and then he made a vote. He said, I want you all to know, would you prefer we just have the original version be the definitive cut? And everybody cheered, and he said, then so be it. That's the only one we're ever going to release now is the original 1982 cut. It's not going to, if any of the deleted scenes and stuff that are in the special edition will be a bonus feature. So it's a role reversal where the special edition is no longer going to be existing and burned, and the negative burned of that, whereas the theatrical version stays. And I think for
that
me,
sucks.
I mean, when it comes to Star Wars, the only reason I think they should have a restored versions of the original unaltered versions is for historical purposes, historical, like, like reasons. Like, the Library of Congress has been constantly asking for Star Wars, and Lucasfilm will only give them the special editions when they want the one that was released to the history books for preservation. And that's the only thing. So with colorized films, I think it's okay to have the color version. Just make sure that the original version is the superior version. That is, like, you can still have the colorized version as a bonus feature. Here's a little thing we kind of experimented with in the 80s. Don't expect it to be the definitive cut, but there you go as a bonus feature.
Like my colorized edition of Night of the Living Dead. It has the black and white cut as a bonus feature.
Yeah, or you can basically tint out the color on your television. There's ways to still do it, but I still think, like, yeah, have it as a bonus feature, not the definitive version, is what I'm saying. But it depends on the behind the scenes factors and the cuts of the film. Like Snyder, the Snyder cut is what should have happened. But it's good to still have the Sweden cut as a bonus feature. So
anyway, back to your pros. Pro number 4, I think it was.
Yeah, so pro number 4 is the quality and definitely the effects. And pro number 5, the action scenes. Definitely has really upped their game since Kong, especially in terms of how they handle effects. Like, there's a lot of dolly shots and moving shots of Mighty Joe walking and running or swinging, whereas the original Kong, they didn't have that technology yet to present in the effects. The majority, all the shots of Kong in the original and the later films, they had to lock down the camera. It's the same thing that Spielberg had a problem with in Jurassic Park. He was kind of being forced to lock down the camera, but he really wanted to push the technology when he did, like, the Gallimimus scene, to do handheld shots with these dinosaurs, which people told him that was impossible. So with Mighty Joe, they pushed the boundaries of the effects where we can still do stop motion, but let's move the camera. Let's have it where there's a bit more movement in the action scenes. And personally, I think it paid off. This was one of the first films that utilized what Ray Harryhausen later used, was Dynamation, which was a way to basically say, we don't need to build model sets with our puppets. We can just have the puppet on a little area. Basically, it was a combination of stop motion and forced perspective, where you have your model in the foreground to make him look bigger, but then you have a big projected background with your already established shot. So when you're animating, it is sort of like the original, where they had the little miniature projections in the model set. But instead they blew it up, where you take a frame from your projector, you move your puppet, you photograph it, and that was the first. It was pretty much the reverse rear screen projection, where you would interact with monsters after already shot, but instead it's the other way around. So Mighty Joe took advantage of that, and it was mostly in its handheld shots. I guarantee that shot of Joe swinging down as the camera zooms in, that was the first time that, like, a rear screen stop motion projected shot was incorporated, and it worked. It really was
probably a bitch to pull off.
It was a bitch, because you're dealing with bigger projectors than you are smaller ones, because smaller ones you can control, whereas big projectors, this was still big motion picture screens, where if you hold it long enough, the film's gonna burn in the projector. Like, having experience using film on projectors, there's a likelihood if you keep it on for too long with the lights, your film's gonna burn. They have to keep it moving in order to make sure it doesn't burn out.
Damn. Super McFist commented saying Kong 33 sucked. I'm not a big fan of it, but I don't think it's that bad. Any other pros?
That's really about it. I mean, that's pretty much it, basically. I go on huge tirades about the technical stuff.
All right. So I have indeed 11 pros, and I actually numbered them, so I won't be going all over the place anymore.
While you're doing that, I gotta get a drink. I'll be right back.
Pro number 1 is, I already kind of alluded to this, but it's the tone. I really like the tone of this film. It's a good mix of not necessarily being dark, but it's a bit more serious, but it's also a lot more lighthearted and family friendly. The best way I could describe it, it's just fun. It's a fun classic family adventure flick with a giant gorilla in it, and anybody can watch it, anybody can sit down and enjoy it, and anybody can get a kick out of it. This movie is this movie's tone, it's perfect for anybody, any age, anywhere. Pro number 2 is the music score. I thought myself that it was done by Max Steiner. It was not. It was done by Roy Webb, but it sounds very, very similar to Kong 33's music score. A lot of the same big, bombastic orchestral notes, a lot of loud trombones and loud bass instruments. It sounds very, very similar, but I think that might have been done on purpose, because this will tie into another pro for me is all the homages to Kong. Well, not really an homage, but I say fun homage to Kong. This does sort of feel like Diet King Kong, but
Like
that's
Diet
not
Coke. No,
Well-
no, it's Mighty Joe. It's 0-calorie Kong.
But that's not a bad thing, in my opinion, because kind of like what Jackie Boy is alluding to, this movie trims all the fat from the original King Kong and makes this movie feel just like the best hits of King Kong, but with the flavor and the premise of Son of Kong.
Did you ever
So-
also feel like? I mean, actually, I was gonna say, because when I'm bringing up the Coke thing, wasn't there a Konga Cola at some point? Like somebody did make a King Kong themed cola. Let me know in the comments. I'm not too sure if that exists. I have to
I
look
have
it up.
no clue.
If that's the case, I have to look it up and try it.
But yeah, again, the music is really good. It definitely fits the movie whenever it's on screen. It like when there's a big epic moment, the music is great. When there's a sad and solemn moment, the music is very fitting. When there's a big thrilling moment, the music is a lot of fun. So yeah, the music is great. And at least Super McFist thinks 76 Kong is his favorite. So
Okay. Well, actually, I found it out. You know what, Nick?
interesting
It exists.
dichotomy.
It exists, Nick. King
Kong
Kong
Cola?
Cola is a thing.
All right, I'll have to look at that real quick.
It's real. And I actually do want to find it and try it.
Oh, yep.
Imagine King Kong beer. It's like a banana flavored beer. Yeah. King Kong Cola. There was also I believe there was actually a frozen like a frozen dessert you can get too, like one of those like popsicle things, like the creamsicles, but it was like a chocolate banana like ice cream thing. No, it's chocolate banana. That actually sounds delicious.
That sounds gross.
No, it's chocolate banana. You ever had a banana split?
I hate banana splits.
Oh, banana splits are awesome. Although the movie is amazing.
Pro number 4 is gonna be, so the music is great and all the homages to Kong. Let me finish up on that. So that's pro number 3 is all the homages to Kong. Like I said, it just feels like all the best elements of the original King Kong with the flavor and premise of Son of Kong made into a hybridized film. And yeah, it just takes the best elements of both and turns it into something that's even better, in my opinion. And you can
have the I did bring out the box set, and also here's the colorized VHS of the movie.
Oh, is it only a VHS?
Yeah, it only came out on VHS. I don't think there was. I think there was a laser disc.
Oh well, I don't have a laserdisc machine.
Oh, laserdisc.
I just have the Blu-ray, which again, this movie is beautiful on Blu-ray.
Yeah, I've only seen. I mean, even on DVD, I think the quality is good. I'll say this too.
Get it?
Quickly.
It's dirt cheap. It's like $14.
Black and white movies in high def actually look fantastic. I've seen them a lot on Turner Classic Movies, although When I saw Dracula and Frankenstein as a double feature on Halloween night, it was the restored version that Universal had done for its 100th anniversary. And that was the first time I sat through both films. Fucking gorgeous. Especially on a big screen. Oh, it looks good. Like, it looks like there's a lot of grain.
Only the movies could be better.
Yeah. Surprised they've never re-released this movie. One of those, like, Phantom events.
And the last thing I'll say is it's very clear that Marion C. Cooper and Ernest B. Schoedsack were just having the time of his life, or the time of their lives, working on this movie, because with Kong 33's production kind of being a bit of a sloppy mess, this just felt like everything that was supposed to go well for King Kong, they got to do it here. So a chance to redeem themselves.
You know what it is, too? It's very much like on par with when Steven and George did Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. I mean, say what you will about the film, but that was
I love it.
That was them getting very nostalgic for making the Indiana Jones trilogy in the 80s. And they're like, let's do another one and let's just have fun again. I'm like, yeah, fuck it, why not?
Pro number 4 and 5 is Jill, played by Terry Moore, and Max, played by Robert Armstrong. So talking about Jill first, not much to say about her, as her character is kind of simple, but I like her way more than fucking Ann Darrow from Kong 33. That's for damn sure. She actually has a personality and is not just a whimpering, screaming, whiny bitch.
Who's Canadian? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I like Terry Moore as Jill. She's likable. She's not bitchy. She cares a lot about her beliefs and certainly cares a lot about Joe, but she never comes off as being bitchy about it. Kind of, sort of like Charlize Theron's character in the remake.
Can I just say that in the remake, Charlize Theron looks fine as fucking hell?
You can, but I won't agree with it because I don't like Charlize Theron.
Even today, she still looks good. God damn.
Not much to say because her character is so simple, but yeah, Joe's a likable female protagonist. And you definitely buy her care and love for Joe, and she has great chemistry with the rest of the characters. And the next pro being Max. I like Max more than Carl.
Well, the only thing is, like, the only thing I have an issue with is that was like 20 years later, and you could see that Robert was showing his age, but at the same time, he still stayed in the same character. It's sort of like when Harrison Ford did The Force Awakens. Yeah, he's older, but he's still having fun.
Yeah, that's really the thing that is conveyed through Robert Armstrong's performance as Max. He's just having fun. There's no, like with Son of Kong, there's no edge of regret or remorse, or it like Carl doesn't have the weight of 1,000,000 tons on his shoulders like he does in Son of Kong. Here, he's totally free and he's totally just having the time of his life. And unlike Carl, who I don't really think ever learned his lesson, because yeah, the whole fiasco with Kong went through.
Well, Son of Kong, he did kind of redeem himself personally.
Yes, but also no, because he was still kind of blinded by his own intentions for getting money with the treasure for Son of Kong.
Well,
however, with Max,
they were getting sued up the hoo-hoo.
With Max, he does realize the error of his ways, and he tries to make amends with Jill and Joe, and he helps them escape, of course. And everybody,
Carl Denham's a Kong Miss Carol.
So this will actually lead me to my own headcanon with Max. I actually have two. Because the characters are so similar, the first headcanon I have is that maybe Max might be Carl's estranged brother. But here's my main one. This is my second one. It actually is Carl Denham, using the funds that he got from splitting the treasure at the end of Son of Kong. He was able to A, pay off his debts, and B, he was able to use whatever he might have had left over in order to reshape his public image, change his identity, and start his life all over again.
That's the
And
thing.
that is why
I was thinking exactly that or he went off grid and he made a new identity for himself, maybe put the mustache on and then started a new show career in LA. Instead of New York, he went to LA so he wouldn't get caught by the feds.
And he does realize the error of his ways because he remembers the whole fiasco with Kong. So then he realizes, ooh, I think I might have this I might be in over my head again. Let me try to fix this while I still can.
You bring up the estranged brother. I would think more of maybe Carl's cousin. Like his cousin is, Max O'Hara. So the O'Haras and the Denhams,
The only monkey wrench that can be thrown into that headcanon is people will ask, where's Hilda, the chick from Son of Kong?
She probably died or something. Or
Either she died or she was a stay-at-home wife or mom.
Something like that. And then it's funny, too, because, then the other monkey wrench is that, well, wait a minute. There's another giant gorilla on show business. Didn't this happen, 20 years ago, guys? This is not good. Also, I think we have a huge epidemic of giant gorillas in our planet, and something needs to be done about that. That is terrifying.
Yeah,
right?
I'm not saying it's a perfect headcanon, but I'm sure there have been people many, many times over the years that have tried to connect Kong, Son of Kong, and Mighty Joe Young.
Like the meme, it's all connected, man.
I'm sure that there are. I didn't even say that on purpose, monkey wrench, but there you go.
I just realized if they did a remake a couple of years ago, you know who actually would have been a good Carl Denham / Max O'Hara? Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Sure.
Yeah, anyway.
But yeah, I'm sure there have been people that have tried to connect these movies, and it can work. Maybe it can't. There's nothing that says it can't, but there's also nothing that says it can. So whatever.
I have one more pro.
Hang on. I choose to believe that Mighty Joe Young is in continuity with Kong and Son of Kong. That's just me.
I have one more pro, and it's a character we've always overlooked. The character of Joe. Joe has a great
Hold on. My next pro number 6, is Joe.
He has a character. He has a personality.
He's adorable.
He has great facial expressions, much more than the original Kong, because the original Kong, he's just like, that, right? And I mean, at least Kiko's more like sort of Jar Jar-y, where he's like, just like kind of like a mute comedian. But Joe has a personality where he's just like, you can tell when he's just doing his thing. You could especially when Max and him show up at Jill's house, he's got that look like, you damn kids, get off my lawn. And even when he's drunk and shit, you can see the facial expressions where he's just like, hey, let me tell you something. Nobody's followed up. Nobody tells me when Joe has enough to drink. I slept with your mom. I put my banana in her, motherfucker. Ah, fuck you.
I put my banana in her split.
No, but and so when he's on his rampage, the guy actually, the facial expressions, he looks drunk. He looks like Johnny Depp in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He's just like, I'm in the middle of a freaking zoo. Somebody's been feeding booze to these bastards. It just feels that way. It's hilarious. And then, even at the end when, he's saving people and, he's trying to catch the kid, when he's stepping on the tree branch and it almost breaks, he's like, oh shit, And then when he falls down, he gets up, he looks so exhausted. He's like, I just want to go home.
I need a vacation.
Fuck this shit. America sucks. It's so good.
Or it's like Arnold at the end of T2. I need a vacation.
Oh, it's great. All that's missing is Joe to give a big thumbs up. Like, surprised you didn't do that. But Ray just gave so much character to the animation. Along with that, one thing I do like that is also sort of very much like connecting it to Kong, the roars are just the same as the original Kong. It's the lion's roar played backwards at half speed. In fact, they actually kind of like enhanced it a little more than they did the original.
Joe, yes, I adore Joe. He's a very fun character. His body language is very well done. His facial expressions are very. I think the facial expressions is the biggest component that Ray Harryhausen added, because Willis O'Brien's monsters, their faces are pretty stiff. They're either neutral or angry. Whereas with Joe, he goes through all different kinds of expressions. He's angry, he's calm, he's happy with that big googly-eyed, goofy grin that he gives Jill when they're playing tug of war. There's fear when he's saving the kids from the burning orphanage. There's depression when he's being homesick. Joe is fucking fantastic.
I want to say this too. It's like one of the characteristics when he's mad, he slams his fist into the ground, because that is something that I think Ray picked up on with people who are really pissed off. Like, because back then they weren't like, oh, fuck, shit. They were just like, damn it. Right? And I guess he saw that. He's like, I'm going to incorporate that in there. But when it comes to the facial expressions, it's all in the eye. This is the thing with Willis O'Brien. You brought this up. It's in the eyebrows and it's in the lips. And the reason that works, they put wire. They put like bendable wire in the lips and cover it with latex so they're easier to bend. So it's all just like little wires that they just put in the eyebrows and the mouth, and that's what creates the facial expressions.
And it looks great. So more on that in a minute. But as a badass monster, I wouldn't say Joe is like quite as violently strong as Kong, but I like that Joe seems to be more intelligent than Kong. So
more human.
Yeah, he's a bit more human. So what Joe lacks in pure brute strength, he makes up for it with his brain power. And I still think that makes Joe to be a fairly competent badass monster.
It is a matter too of like when he fights, it's not like, oh, I'm mad, fuck you. Like, he's actually being, like, you're right, he's intelligent. So when he sees people in trouble, like, even when he's going on a drunken fit through the club, he sees somebody getting mauled by lions, and he says, that's a person. I gotta make sure this guy doesn't get hurt. Hey, lion, get the fuck off him.
Also, unlike Kong too, Joe isn't looking to kill people, but he is willing to fuck them up a little bit. So that's definitely another thing about Joe that makes him very different from Kong. Kong's willing to kill, obviously. Joe is not. He's angry and he's strong, but especially when Jill is around, he's very tempered.
And when he fights, he never goes for a killing move where Kong does this kills anything. Joe, when he's sort of like Batman. When he kicks people's ass, that's all he does. He kicks their ass and tells them,
no.
Stop it.
So yeah, Joe is awesome. He's adorable. He's fun to watch. He has great chemistry with the rest of the characters. The animation on him is very good. I love Joe. He's awesome. This will lead me into pro number 7 is the special effects. The stop motion is very, 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 very good. I would say it is superior to Kong and Son of Kong. One of the biggest things that drives me crazy about the original Kong is Kong's hair is always shifting from scene to scene.
That was because, I want to just say quickly, that's because of the rabbit fur, and when they were animating the test stuff, they were looking at the dailies, and the studio heads were like, that's not good. And then when the film, they were just said, fuck it, just put it out there. But then when the film came out, everybody was like, this film is so amazing and realistic. When Kong's on the building, you could see the wind blowing at his back. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's the only thing you can really explain that with. But the hair on Joe stays very smooth. There's a couple shots where you can see the hair kind of rustle around a little bit, but it's nothing as obnoxiously noticeable as Kong. So yeah, the stop motion on Joe is very well detailed. It's very well animated. It's a lot smoother. It's not nearly as choppy or jittery as Kong. It feels a lot more smooth and fluid.
I think it's also a
Again,
matter of just like when they put the fur on them this time, rather than being rabbit fur, they used a different material fur, and they probably put some like spray, some hairspray on it to keep it more like sort of like a like
smooth.
when you put like sort of like a hair gel, like when you put hair gel on, it keeps your hair from like blowing and shit. Where they kind of did the same thing, where they just kind of smoothed it down, so where you're animating it, the bristles are a little less noticeable, and they trimmed it much more than the original Kong, with the fur and everything. And even another thing it does compared to Kong, whereas Kong is much more bipedal, Joe half the time is on all fours like a real gorilla. Like he is much more gorilla than Kong is. Kong was much more of a debate between ape and man, a missing link almost. And that has been a thing with the character, I think, since at least '05, was the idea he's a human, like he's a gorilla, but he's very much evolved to more of a human physical behavior.
And this will, again, lead me to reiterate as to why I believe Ray Harryhausen surpassed Willis O'Brien as far as I'm concerned. Willis O'Brien is good, but I just think Ray Harryhausen had more time and more opportunities to flush out the art of stop motion, whereas Willis O'Brien kind of always struggled. He always did his job well, no doubt about that. But Ray, I just think, is better.
Well, I mean, at the time, too, that O'Brien's career was very much like after Kong, very much a hit or miss, mostly downplayed for a couple of reasons. One, his movies after Kong didn't really do too well half the time. And on top of that, he was married to an estranged wife who
murdered their children.
Yeah. So he was in a really bad spot. And when the movies came out, when Kong came out, he didn't get the credit. Him and his effects team didn't get any credit for the success. And so when Joe came out, I think it was also a matter of, it wasn't just Cooper and Schoedsack being nostalgic, but they brought in Willis O'Brien to say, you know what, man, we feel really bad about we saw what happened with your career. We saw that you didn't get the recognition you deserve. So we're going to make it up to you. When you do this movie for us, you are going to get full effects credit. We're going to get you out there. And it did pay off, because after Willis O'Brien won the Academy Award that year for the effects on Mighty Joe, then everybody knew who he was. They looked up his resume and was like, who is this Willis O'Brien? Oh my God, he did King Kong. Okay, you know what? This guy's awesome. And then he kind of had a bit more of a career, a bit more of a successful popularity post Mighty Joe.
The only two movies that I know of that Willis O'Brien worked on is The Black Scorpion from 1957. No.
I think that also used leftover puppets from the Spider Pit scene.
We'll get to that. Wink, wink. And, of course, he also did The Giant Behemoth, released in 58 and 59. Also more on that later.
And the last movie he was credited with was It's a
Mad World. Though he died during that movie's production.
It's stated that King Kong versus Godzilla killed him. The movie killed him. The concept of the movie killed him. He died of a broken heart. He saw the news and he had a heart attack because John Beck fucked him in the ass. It's pretty sad.
Yeah, I already know that. So moving on.
It's like, just very last thing is that I think even though he was kind of on his way out and he got the Academy Award for it, he pretty much knew that Ray Harryhausen was surpassing him. His pupil was surpassing him. And he said, my art form will live on in this guy. He's got this. He's got this. He's going to pass on what I've learned.
Pro number 8 is the set designs. Not much to say about these. Actually, all my last 4 pros, I don't have a whole lot to say about them. But the set designs are phenomenal. It's mostly the biggest set that sticks out to me is the nightclub. The nightclub looks phenomenal.
It's like a rainforest cafe in Vegas.
And it looks fantastic. It looks totally believable as being a real life nightclub that is trying to be a rainforest in the middle of Vegas.
I'll say this, in comparison to the remake, this is much better. Because in the remake, it's just a little tent party. It's kind of lackluster, I guess.
Low key. I wouldn't say lackluster. It's just kind of low key.
It's probably because of budgeting and shit. But the original, can you imagine, like, say they did the remake and did that scene, but they used the sets from, like, The Mask, the nightclub set from The Mask.
That would be cool.
That would have been awesome. But, obviously, it's like, obviously budget. But yeah, with the original, this is like, it looks like the set of The Mask, but instead of Jim Carrey, it's Kong.
The ranch set and the Africa sets also look very good. A bit stagey.
I mean, it's your typical African village set.
But it still looks good. It's well detailed. It looks like it's actually lived in. It looks like a legit set from Africa. The nightclub scene is phenomenal. Joe's cage looks good. And the orphanage looks really, really, really good. That's a big ass fucking orphanage, by the way. That has to at least be a 10-story building.
Looks like Wayne Manor.
Yeah, almost.
Yeah, it's funny too, because like, again, I made a little comparison with the ending with the remake, is that I do think the original had the better ending. Like, it did have the better scope. But I will say the remake, it had a better heart and emotion. Like, I mean, yes, in the remake, it's just a Ferris wheel. And it's just much more of a bit more kind of smaller and condensed. But I do think both endings do have their merits. I think the remake is more emotional, but the original ending is much more bigger in scope and much more dramatic in its visuals.
Pro number 9 is going to be the action scenes. There's not that many. There's the lasso scene. There's the first few shows, like Joe versus the Strongmen. Then there's the nightclub rampage. And then there's all of the ending, Joe's escape leading into the orphanage scene. So there's really kind of only 4 action scenes. But still, they're all fun. They're well animated. The integration of the stop motion and the characters is very, very good. Kong fighting off not Kong. See, Joe fighting off the lions is also a lot of fun to watch. It's a bit jittery and it's a bit too quick for my taste, but still, it's also pretty obvious when the real lions end and the stop motion lions begin. But still, they were trying.
I want to say too, with the lasso scene, when I mean like they later use that in Guanji, take that scene where they're lassoing Joe, but replace Joe with the Tyrannosaurus Rex, and there's the scene from Guanji for you. So imagine that. That's a pretty cool idea. So it's that, and then also with the orphanage scene, I actually forgot about this little tidbit. When the hero cowboy character is grabbing kids from the lasso and stuff, and he's like grabbing them and bringing them down, the shot where he falls and like collapses and Joe grabs him, the stunt actor in that take had actually broken his ankle. Like he actually
I believe it.
And like he actually broke his ankle in that fall when they dragged him. So that's a real injury captured on film. It's sort of like Vigo breaking his toe in Two Towers.
That had to hurt.
Oh, when he kicked the bucket and he screamed.
He used the pain to fuel his scream.
Yep.
So happy accident. That had to hurt. Yeah, again, not much to say about the action scenes. But they're fun. They're well animated. Oh no. One thing I forgot to say about Joe, he's a slight bit of a smartass, because once he eludes the police during the end chase, he's sitting on the back of he's sitting on the back of the truck. He's got his hands in his lap and he's waving his legs back and forth. And then he just goes, "Puh."
Well, I mean, if they did,
I got away.
If they did it today, he'd
Keep
probably
your head in doo doo, nana nana boo boo.
No, if they did it today, one, he would pull an ape and flip them off. But second, he'd probably do this.
No, they would pull a George from Rampage and then flip him off.
No. He would do the Sonic, the stupid fucking dancing, stupid the air hump thing. What the fuck is that you kids do? Anyway, cons.
Hold on, I have 2 more pros. These are kind of minor. Pro number 10, Joe fucking lives.
Yes!
I actually was led to believe that Joe dies, like he sacrifices himself to save the kids from the orphanage. And that's another thing that kind of put me off this movie for a long, long time. I just really wasn't interested in seeing that because and that would even more so cement to me like, this is just like Kong and Joe fucking dies. I'm not interested. But watching the movie, I didn't know that Joe actually lives. So that was a very happy accident. And then when I see the final shot with Joe on screen waving at the camera, that brought a big smile to my face. I was like,
oh, this is the real King Kong lives.
Yeah, no kidding. And pro number 11 finally is I have an issue with with the final scene with the orphanage, but still it's technically impressive. The red tint does give it a good sense of atmosphere, like a good disaster movie feel. And also it's cool.
Inferno.
Huh?
It reminds me of kind of the Towering Inferno.
Never seen that movie. It looks like a good movie.
That's
Irwin Allen for you.
Yeah, it's John Gulliman.
Or John Gulliman, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, the effects are great. And it's also fun to watch Joe redeem himself and save Jill and save the kids. It's sweet. Adds even more to Joe's character. It makes him even more likable.
Yeah. I'll say this, like, came out to the court scene. When we were going to sentence him to death, he saved kids. You know what? Reduce the sentence.
I have 4 cons, though only one of them is really major. So, and I think I know what Jackie Boys is also. That's pretty major.
I only
we're going to save that for last.
But I'll let you go first.
We're going to save that for last. So I have 4 cons. One of them's major. The other 3 are kind of minor. So how many do you have?
I only have really 1.
Okay. Con number 1 is I do think the movie is just a tad too short. Mostly this has to do with the third act. It does feel not necessarily rushed, but it just kind of feels like the movie sort of sprints to the finish line to end. And I think it could have used, it's an hour and 33 minutes. I think they could have used an extra 7 minutes, just being an even hour and 40, at least for my tastes. It is better than Son of Kong. Anything's better than Son of Kong. But yeah, I think this movie is just a tad too short.
I'll say this. I actually have 4 cons, but we'll save the last one together for last.
Con number 2 is this is a recurring thing with Kong movies. The showbiz commentary is a tad forced, like anti-capitalism, anti-exploitation. King Kong versus Godzilla, this movie is not.
I'll say this, when they showed the Showtimes and newspapers constantly, I want to be like, okay, we get it, movie. It's bad. We get it.
Yeah. King Kong versus Godzilla, this movie is not, thankfully. But still, it is a bit tacked on and par for the course at this point.
I mean,
no way I'm not excited for Scream 5. I couldn't care less.
At least this movie doesn't always cut away to a bunch of Americans reporting in a crappy set.
Ugh. Con number 3 is this is the issue that I have with the orphanage scene. It's just a tad forced. Like, it kind of feels like it comes out of nowhere.
Yeah, I mean, and then I guess the way they did it was to redeem Joe's character and kind of redeem.
In that sense, well, I mean, I don't really think we needed that for the audience, but I guess for the characters it was necessary. It is a fun scene and it's entertaining and the effects are really well done, but still, it is just a tad forced and it kind of comes out of nowhere, in my opinion.
I just want to say, in terms of just the context of the movie, I mean, it redeems a lot of characters because it not only redeems Joe and mostly redeems Joe, but think about this. Had they, obviously cut that scene out and just had it where, Joe got back to Africa, it kind of, takes some of these characters and that kind of were left behind and realize, yeah, he got away, but you guys are still fucking assholes. But on top of that, especially Max O'Hara, but on top of that, it kind of makes it out like, did we just root for a couple of criminals who are now wanted fugitives to get away? It's kind of a misstep. Like, so I think something was needed to redeem these characters, like all the characters. That's what also makes the ending so uplifting. All the characters needed redemption. Everyone.
And a happy ending.
Yeah. There's no loose ends. There's no villain. It's just everybody actually gets out pretty scot-free at the end.
Yeah. So, it's, again, not a huge problem, but just overall, my thing is that maybe they could have used that extra 7 minutes to kind of set up the burning orphanage.
At least the remake kind of established why Joe needed to save people because of all the damage the Hunter dude was doing at the fair. He misfired and it caused sparks and caused a fire. So even with Joe saving the kids at the end, it's reasonable because the bad guy was not only going to kill Joe, he pretty much almost was about to kill a boatload of people and children. Look, he already killed the mom in the beginning. He's already known to kill people to get what he wants. But now it's like, okay, dude, you're killing children. Now you gotta go. Now you gotta die.
Yeah, that's my only issue. Is it just kind of comes out of nowhere, and it's not well integrated into the movie, in my opinion. So that's where I think that extra 7 minutes could have come in handy. The biggest problem that I have with this movie.
But I want us to do it together, but I want to explain my first 3 cons first.
All right, make them quick.
Okay, first of all, you are right. It is a little too short. The speed is it's a little bit on fast forward, I think. There's not really much time to develop the characters and pause for a bit. It's just constantly moving. That is an issue, but I don't mind it. It's like Jurassic Park 3. It's actually pretty good as a smaller, condensed story. Second con, I do agree, given it is much more of a family-friendly movie, that some of the comedy feels a little too goofy. Slapsticky. Like, Max O'Hara feels almost like a prototype of Mr. Taco in Kong vs. Godzilla. It's a little too wacky. It's a little too wacky, it's like Home Alone all of a sudden with Max O'Hara, right? Con number 3, I do like Jill in this movie, but I think because they were going for much more of a family-friendly audience, she's less the Kong female lead and much more Dorothy Gale. She feels very much like Dorothy in Wizard of Oz. And
I can see that.
Because we've seen this character multiple times in these kind of films, it feels a little stale at this point. But nothing to take away from Terry Moore and nothing to take away from the character. It's just cliche preferences. But pro number 4, and I think we're both going to say it together, and we can count down.
You said pro, it's con.
It's a con. Con number 4, whatever. 1,
Greg.
2, 3.
Greg
Ben Johnson
is boring as fuck.
He sucks. Out of all the hero characters in Kong, he is the worst. I'd rather take Jack Driscoll in The Mighty Kong. I'd rather take Adrian Brody.
What?
Yeah, what? I'd rather take Mr. What? Right? He stinks. He sucks.
His face is very blank and expressionless. His voice is very monotone and
he's just
boring and dull.
He's just your
his character
cowboy.
He is a generic cowboy that's flat as a plateau.
The only thing John Wayne interesting. This was at the time John Wayne movies were huge. He's not even a John Wayne.
But yeah.
Yeah, not a John Wayne, not a Steve McQueen. He's not even a Clint Eastwood. He's
just boring.
He's like he is as bad as Paul Rudd in Halloween 6. He sucks.
The only thing that makes him noteworthy is that he knows how to lasso. That's it.
And that's the only character. hey, we get to save a couple of extra kids with a rope. That's his character.
Cool.
Like, it's
not good enough.
Even when he feels like a cardboard cutout half the time. He is literally in every scene just doing this. I'm the hero.
Yeah.
That's my character. I'm the hero. Like, that's basically, you can replace all his dialogue with, I'm the hero.
I'm the hero.
I'll give credit that in the remake, this is one of the reasons why I think the remake is a little superior. Because Bill Paxton, Max O'Hara in that remake, is a perfect combo of both characters, Max O'Hara and Ben Johnson's character, where he is very much the adventurous type like Robert Armstrong, but he's the hero aspect to Ben Johnson, and they just combine. I like the fact that they combine the two characters together in the remake rather than having that's where it kind of the Kong trope, the tributes were a little too forced, where you have to have the 3 leads, where you could have condensed it to 2 in this one.
Not to mention Bill Paxton is a far superior actor.
Oh yeah, it's like keeping him here. Any person finding him will have to bring Joe down. Game over, man. I fucking love Bill Paxton. Even in Titanic, he's like, I'll be goddamn. It's like. I saw riff tracks on Titanic. He's doing like recording the ship footage. Here he is in the sinking of a ghost ship. It's a bug hunt, man.
Anyway, yeah, Greg is one of the worst leading male protagonists in a monster movie.
I completely forgot his name. That's how much he sucks. I just call him Ben Johnson.
He's boring. He's dull. He's flat. His romance with Jill is totally forced and very unbelievable and very par for the course at the time.
Kiss me. I'm the hero.
Pretty much, yeah. That sums up his character.
Shut up.
He's just not that great, unfortunately. He's definitely the biggest.
Enchanted was much more of a hero than you, and he was a little bitch in that movie.
I would actually say he's equally as bad as he's slightly better.
He's better. Don't talk shit. Bruce Cabot was good in the original.
No, he's not. He's boring.
At least he had a character. Somewhat of a better character.
It was a bad character, and it also came with really bad dialogue. I guess I love you.
Yeah, I love the whole time. It's like, I'm sexist. Women suck. Oh, actually, I love you. Oh, wait, boobs. Kiss me.
Pretty much, yeah. So that's why I think Greg is slightly better. Not by much, but still. And with all that being said, that's all I have to say about the original Mighty Joe Young. Final thoughts, Jackie boy?
It's a classic. It is a great film for its time. It was a perfect storm of everybody's experiences post Kong and their time on Kong, where they're able to perfect it. You had the combination of a decent cast minus one, improved effects, improved action scenes, and then just, I think the other reason this was so somewhat successful, I mean, yes, it didn't do well, but it still got out there, was mostly because of the resume of John Ford and Marion C. Cooper, because these guys at the time were a duo on and redefining the Westerns with John Wayne, with The Searchers and just all these films with John Wayne, and they said, let's take that success and combine it with our love of what we did on Kong, and I think that's why it did so well. It is old. That's another thing too. I will say this: it's a Western Kong, like it's a Kong movie.
I can see that
of a Western, of a golden age Western like The Searchers, and with that, it's pretty much a kind of a cap to a unintentional trilogy of films.
Unofficial.
Like unintentional. This is just they just call it the King Kong collection. I wouldn't call it the trilogy, but it's just sort of the unintentional trilogy is how I would put it. And yeah, it's a good 7 out of 10 for me. Like, it's a decent flick, and I still have fun with it. It has its moments.
I just realized our review is going to be longer than the movie itself.
Well, I mean, like, depending on how long we go, we can actually go past the original Kong, because the original Kong was an hour and 40 minutes.
My final thoughts on Mighty Joe Young. I dug this movie. I thought it was a very fun time, a very big, pleasant surprise. It was very entertaining. It was a lot of fun. I had a blast watching it. Certainly had a blast reviewing it, especially in this new setup. And it's just a perfect setup to the masterpiece that is Ape versus Monster. I'm going to give this movie a... Sadly, I want...
I have not watched that piece of shit yet.
Only saying that because Jackie Boy hates asylum movies.
You can see triggered at the bottom here.
I want to give this a perfect 10. Sadly, I can't. So I will be giving this as close as I can give it, which is a solid 9 out of 10. I really dug this movie. It was a very big, pleasant surprise.
It's a classic.
So, Jackie Boy, anything to plug?
Not much. I've got probably a new video actually coming out at midnight tonight. It's the best of the highlights of 2021, my annual highlight video. I've actually got a new review coming. I've just finished up the audio portions. I'm doing the clips. I won't say what it is. I want to surprise people, but there is it is Kong related. So look forward to that. Hopefully at the end of the month. And it will be basically the start of season 7. If you want to catch up of what we've done, check out my Godzilla vs. Kong review with a crossover with the Angry Video Game Nerd on my channel. It's actually our Fuck! It is my most successful episode to date. Over New Year's weekend when it released, it got like over 7,000 views in a weekend. That's crazy. Go check it out.
Fuck.
And I also just put out a redo of the Power Rangers intro for season 2. Like, I've got some cool stuff coming. Right now, Ontario actually just went into another lockdown. So, which is fine. Glad they're doing it in the winter rather than the summer. So we have time to prep. But I've got some good ideas coming out. I'm really looking forward to 2022. I think we're already pretty much we're having a bit of a tough time, but that's just social media fucking with our brains. But if we just ignore it, it'll go away. But anyway, yeah, that's it. And I'm glad I could help you get this new setup, Nick. I think this is going to be much better for your channel.
Look forward to the next video, which will be episode 34 of Super Kaiju Binge, where once again, me and Jackie Boy will be discussing the Black Scorpion. Look forward to that. Post your comments down below. Let me know what you think.
I just realized you had me on the 33rd episode, 1933. It's all connected, man. It's a bug hunt.
Well, it's just a good lead up to the masterpiece that is Ape versus Monster.
Just to quote my reaction. No.
Yeah, post your comments down below. Let me know what you think. Hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. And share this video with your friends. Look forward to the Black Scorpion review. And as always, if you go to Africa and you discover a 12-foot tall gorilla, just leave it alone. It might try to put its banana in your split. And I'll see you guys in the next video.